Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Sandy Shaw. I'm the MPP for Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas, and I'm also the official opposition environment critic. And I'm joined here today by my colleagues, the MPP for Toronto Danforth, Peter Tabuns, who's also the official opposition critic for energy and the climate crisis, and the MPP for Kiiwetinoong, Sol Mamakwa, who's also the critic for Indigenous and treaty relations. And so we're here today because this is World Water Day, and we want to highlight some of the concerns that we have when it comes to the province's water and the future of water in this province. For some of us, when we hear World Water Day, we might think of some of the good memories that we have, spending time by the water with our family, swimming, canoeing. But unfortunately, this is also a day to remember some of the massive failures, policy failures of successive governments, and I have to say especially this government when it comes to protecting our water. So to put it simply, watersheds are of vital importance to us and to our survival. There's no other way around it. And, we know and we should know that watersheds clean our drinking water, they protect endangered species, and they certainly protect us from flooding in our homes and property. But unfortunately, what we see here in the province of Ontario is a government that is taking us backwards when it comes to protecting our water. We see a government that has essentially fired scientists. They ignore advice from the Greenbelt Council. And really, it cannot be said any other way, they've kneecapped conservation authorities. Conservation authorities that have done so much work for so many years with their authority to protect our water and our watershed. So it's, the crisis is real, and we're here to highlight that, like that today on World Water Day. We know that water, and especially our watersheds in Ontario, is vital to our personal survival, and it's important to the health of our communities. And instead of dragging us backwards, we should be doing everything we can to protect its long-term viability. So that's why we're here today, and that's why I'm tabling 4 motions that call on this government to protect our province's water. I'm calling, number 1, on the Ford government to expand the Greenbelt by working with farmers, municipal leaders, and with Indigenous communities. I'm calling on the government to work again with Indigenous communities and all orders of government and business leaders and environmental stakeholders to protect 30% of our province's water by 2030. We here believe that water is for life and not for profit, so we are asking for a public review of the government's permit to take water process, the permit to taking water process, particularly when it comes to bottling water in the province. And finally, we believe that this government should base all decisions about water on what is in the best public interest and one that honors treaty obligations. So we're calling on this government to develop a transparent and comprehensive provincial water strategy for all of us and for future generations. And before I close, I want to thank the hundreds of thousands of Ontarians who do this work every day to protect our water. All the folks that stood up to protect Duffins Creek in Hamilton. I would like to thank groups like Environment Hamilton and Stewards of Cootes Paradise. There's the Wellington Water Watchers, Gravel Watch, Indigenous water protectors. I especially would like to remind all of us of the work of Josephine Mandamin, who walked all of the Great Lakes in her senior years to highlight the importance of the Great Lakes to all of us. And so there are so many more that we need to thank, but we here appreciate your work and respect your work, and we need to keep going. And with that, I will now pass this to my colleague, Sol, to say a few words. Thanks, Sol.
Clean drinking water.
Drinking water, yeah.
Thank you, Sandy, for the motions. Thank you for the invite. I think it was in 1993 when the United Nations enacted to have a World Water Day. And it's really important that that's 30 years ago. And I know that in February 1, 1995 is when Niskandaga had their boil water advisory. And it's important to acknowledge, when you see the unwillingness of both levels of government, how they address the boil water advisories on First Nations reserves for Indigenous people in this Canada and in Canada. It seems like sometimes that we are in a different Ontario, a different Canada, because of the treatment of using jurisdiction not to do anything. I think one of the, when I travel to the riding of Kiewit, you begin to see things happen. The impacts. I know a couple months ago I flew into a community and, they were handing out bottled water. And that's, that signified things. And I'm only there for like the first 15 minutes. And when you stay overnight, you start feeling the examples of the impacts. And, you boil water, bottled water, to make coffee the next morning, But the more you stay, the more you talk to people, the more stories that you see of how people, First Nations people, children as well, are impacted because of the lack of clean drinking water. This is not the 1950s. This is 2023, and we are treated as second-class people when we talk about clean drinking water. So I just like to say that I think the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement, and the room improvement would be giving everybody in Ontario access to clean drinking water. Because
thank you both. This is a very significant series of motions that are being brought forward. People in Southern Ontario take water for granted. In the North, clearly they don't. Negligence, colonialism have meant that people face very difficult relationships with water. Here in the South, we think that things will be fine. We're beside Lake Ontario, all is good. The reality is that the water regime, the water climate is changing, and it's going to be changing quite dramatically. We need to prepare for it. MPP Shaw's motions are an important part of that adjustment. People should realize that we are seeing changing water conditions here in Lake Ontario. 5 years ago, the Pickering Nuclear Generating Station had to shut down 4 reactors within about 5 minutes because algae in Lake Ontario was clogging the cooling pipes. That had not been a substantial problem in the past. The lakes are changing. We're going to see, without a doubt, increased drought, and we're going to see increased flooding. We need to make sure that our water supplies are protected so that we will have drinking water. We need to make sure that we have protections like the Greenbelt to deal with flooding. People should be aware that within the last 3 years, there was a flooding event in New York City that led to 12 people being drowned in their basement apartments because that city didn't have the sewers, the water pipes to take away excess water. Well, here in Toronto, we need to make sure that we are protected against such flooding. And again, MPP Shaw's resolutions will address that. This government has been sitting on its hands for the last 5 years. It needs to take action now to respond to a climate crisis that is deepening, not letting up, but deepening. Thank you.
I want to thank both of my colleagues. As you can see, we're very committed to this issue, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have this morning.